extremely, for me, and I think for our organization, it's been an issue that we've been very concerned about, the education issue. Some of us in the room, I got somebody up front here that, along with myself, another gentleman in back, we are also involved in education at the university level with a group called the Free Speech for Campus Group. So we have, some of us, been spending a fair amount of time on this. I would just like to see, before we now turn it over in a second, my assumption is that the Fox Valley Initiative is going to be called very shortly the Fox Valley Conservatives, because we're changing organizations to a 501c4 we're going to be. My assumption is, because of the conversations we've had, things haven't been precisely defined, but I can see, I know what is being pointed at very strongly. I think we're going to take a much stronger interest as an organization in the K-12, in particular, education issue than we ever have in the past. I'm expecting that. And I won't go into details on it other than to say I think we'll provide support that has not been provided by this organization in the past for those running for that office. So with that, we've asked the speakers to, they've seen 6 statements basically, and I've added 2 which they aren't acquainted with. I'll bring them up later. But then we're going to go through, they're going to make a brief discussion here about their personal background biography. They're going to talk about discuss their run for the school board, what they learned, maybe some issues they ran into, what some of the hot button issues were. Once on the school board, what was the biggest surprise? Once on that school board, what was the biggest challenge? And then once on the school board, do you feel you're having any impact now? So those are some of the things we're going to go into. But with that, I'm going to ask Drew, I think, to start. You're going to give us a little insight who you are and some of these questions, and I'll be moderating it with you. So the floor is yours. And by the way, what I should do, I'm sorry, I got to get a mic here. Make sure we're ready to go in case I need a little amplification here.
It'll make you look good.
It is. Okay, it's all yours.
All right. Guess I don't have to be too close to that. Drew Lundt for the Clintonville School Board of Education. I was born and raised in Clintonville. I keep leaving and I keep coming back. So I kind of refer to it as the black hole. Obviously I'm joking, but I do keep leaving and I keep coming back, and it really is my home. When I was younger, I had dreams to become a teacher, actually, and so I would pay attention to my teachers, and I would, there was, in my opinion, there were most of the teachers, and then there were the ones that had the real life experiences, and it was only the ones with the real life experiences that really got to me, that I could relate to. And so I'm going to be a teacher, but not when I'm younger, because I need to go out and experience these things. So I kind of made it my lifelong goal, when I was younger. Went to college, had pretty much any type of job you can imagine. And once I felt like I had a pretty good handle on that industry, then I always called it retired. Or I just quit for no reason and went on to the next thing, right? Well, eventually, I got a girlfriend who wanted to be my wife, and she's like, it's time to do something. I'm like, all right. So I went back to school. I got my teaching degree, and Walker changed everything with teachers at that point. And so life has kind of a goofy way of, deciding where you're going to go. And so, long story longer, I still do teach people, but I ended up in the insurance industry. And so now I teach people about insurance, and it's been real good. But I guess that whole thing leads me back to part of why I got on the school board. I still find it fascinating how the school systems work and how some people are really good teachers, and it really doesn't matter your education level. You can be a really good teacher regardless. You just have to have that passion. So that's basically where I am. What made me run for the school board, kind of the second part to that first question would be, an easy answer is COVID. Before that, I was very busy starting my own agency. I had younger kids, and hey, send them to school. They can get it figured out there. If there's a problem, I'll get involved. Otherwise, well, then all of a sudden COVID happened, and like, well, you guys aren't going to school anymore? Oh, well, we're going to do the at-home something. Okay. Well, then they're at home and they're not doing that, and I'm like, something's not working out here, and something's not right. So I started paying attention and started asking questions, and well, don't worry about it. Well, my kids only get one shot at this, so I'm going to worry about it, and if you can't answer my questions, then maybe you're in the wrong position. Well, that didn't go over real well either. But again, I don't really care because it was for my kids. So it's either going to make sense or I'm going to get involved. And so it was really those inconsistencies, and when I'd ask questions, basically, just sit down, shut up, we got this kind of attitude, and that just doesn't really sit well for me, and I try and make sure I'm not that school board member ever, now that I am on the board. So.
All right. Thank you, Drew. I'm Jeff Nelson. It's kind of weird. A long time ago, I vowed I would never run for politics. I'd always be involved a little bit, but I would never run. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I graduated from Green Bay East High School, public high school at the time. And then after that, I went to UW-Madison, where I worked in the state senate for 4 years. So there you go. And I was...
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Can you hear him in back? Can you hear him okay? A little iffy. Okay.
How about this?
That'll help. Get that mic
There we go. And then I got involved into campaign politics when I was in Madison. So I was an opposition researcher. That's what I was trained. And once I taught at UW-Madison, I was a TA for the English department, teaching history in the English department. And then I left after graduation and moved to Washington, D.C. and worked in Alphabet Soup for a little while. But I understood that working on the Hill wasn't exactly what I thought it would be, and I left as quick as I could. I stayed out there for an additional 10 years, but I didn't find it to be as ethical as the politicians at the time were in Madison, and there were some definitely questionable things. And so I said, okay, well, I'm done. Fast forward, I moved back to Wisconsin. I was in a car accident. I was told I would never work again. So I started my own business, and it's thriving. It's here in Appleton. I have employees, and thank God my wife married me. And we have 3 wonderful children. And we lived in Green Bay at the time.
Would you share your business? I'd like to know maybe others would. What's your business?
So I do digital marketing. So when I did opposition research, we used LexisNexis. And LexisNexis was kind of like an intranet, right? But it was an intranet that you pay a very heavy subscription to. And it essentially I'd sit in the Library of Congress, and you could sit there and go through microfiche of newspapers trying to figure out what people said. But LexisNexis, you could just put keywords in, right? And you could get all the articles coming to you instead of spending, 30, 40 hours to try to find 1 or 2 articles. So it was revolutionary. So I started doing that at the very beginning. So I do digital marketing, and I do, the name of the company is called Resident Capture. I mostly work for mass tort law firms, and I do work for the REIT industry, real estate investment trust companies, all across the country. Hovde is one of our clients, so in Madison. So we've got a pretty big network across the country. So our first daughter had Down syndrome, and we lived in Green Bay, my wife and I. And so I went to the schools. I wanted to see what was available for her, and I was told that she couldn't go to Siddle because we lived in Brown County, but in the Green Bay school districts. So I figured out the solution to that, and that was to move. So we picked Wrightstown, and that's how I ended up in Wrightstown. It was right about the time of COVID, towards the end. That's when I ran. So I started going to school board meetings. I started listening to parents talk about human growth and development being taught without having an ad hoc committee in the school district. I took a look at their website, saw that it was not secure. I made that my primary issue is, online security and education first for the kids. Once I got there, it was a totally different story, right? It became something very, very different. It's like I warped back 20 years and I was sitting on Capitol Hill again. So it was different. So my run for school board was pretty interesting. There was 5 seats open, and there were 7 people who ran. And so I won a 3-year seat, so the top 2 people got a 3-year seat, so I was in the top 2. I wasn't number 1. A school teacher who had taught in the district for years, people knew her, and I was an outsider. So I was from Green Bay, and they didn't take kindly to being an outsider. But you can win people over quickly. And one of the things that I did realize is that now, it'd be don't jump to conclusions here, but network, when you're on a school board, you're gonna find a lot of commonalities between the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, especially with people that have been around the block a lot longer, people who are a little bit older, and they're not as naive and they don't buy into the wokeness of the education system. And what I found was I was endorsed by the NEW Patriots, I was endorsed by the Republican Party of Brown County, and I was endorsed by one Democrat in the village who didn't want a woke school system and a budding tax issue. Our school district went to referendum. It was a $28.7 million referendum, and our district started to defease debt, essentially doubling everybody's taxes right away, when it was promised to be a 20-year loan, and this 20-year repayment. So that was another issue that took front and center right away, and it's being investigated right now. So there's a criminal investigation looking into the district. I can't exactly tell you exactly everything that's in there, but there's a lot of stuff that was uncovered. So I guess the hot button issues of today are, there's a lot of hot button issues, but before you decide to run, the first thing I would recommend to anybody is pray about it. Make sure this is where God is leading you. Make sure that this is where your heart is. Make sure this is where your family's heart is. Discuss with your spouse and your family what you're getting into, because this isn't cut and dry. These are our children, and I believe the motivation for me to run was because I have the biggest impact, and I thought it would be, and I still believe it's with the children, right? When I found out that they were teaching, the 202, I believe it was at the time, personal pronouns that you could have in our school district, I didn't want my children to learn that. And I didn't understand it. So I had a lot to learn when I became a school board member. I followed state statutes. I raised questions. The superintendent used a lawyer to try to, spend $2,500 on lawyer fees to stop me from getting a special meeting to bring this up to the board. I could not get it on the agenda. And then we flipped the board, okay? And the conservatives took over. That superintendent had retired, and a new superintendent stepped in, and it was pretty sticky. It was kind of an old school attitude where we know better than you do, right? But as elected officials, we're fiduciaries for the public. We're in the school district. We have to take care of the school district. We're responsible for every dollar that's spent. We're responsible for all of the curriculum. I found out that, I could not find any curriculum that had been approved until I went back into older meeting minutes from, beyond 5, 6, 7 years ago to find actually where the district had approved curriculum. We didn't have the state statute required ad hoc committee for human growth and development, which is sex ed. We didn't do a lot of things that were mandated and by the state legislature, signed into law, and we just weren't following. And so what happens when you start to tell people, right, privately, to try to get action internally, and then they don't listen to you, and then you take it up to the next level, is that you will face retaliation. They recalled our school board president, who uncovered a whole plethora of other issues. And it just became very interesting. Was it worth it? Yes, 100%. Now, I did lose my last election, okay? And that's, it's very interesting. It was, our hands were tied when it came to the election because we knew a lot of the things as witnesses to what was going on in our school district. So we couldn't talk. And also, I don't believe in trashing people. So I would get people texting me, you know, so-and-so said that you're a bleep who doesn't like farmers. Well, Wrightstown is a farming community. My brother has a farm. You know, my wife's in-laws have a farm, and I've never said anything that ridiculous in my life. People said, why don't you respond to that? I'm not going to take shots at people just because they can do it. It doesn't mean that we can. You have to maintain your integrity, right? And if you get into these, we're not all Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump can get away with this. He has the gravitas to be able to pull that, but most people don't. And so we sat in an election where someone was being recalled, and eventually the two other conservatives, they resigned because they were afraid of retaliation. So now here's one for you. What happened to get this all kicked off is they started a Facebook page with 3 school board members. That was invitation only, and it was moderated. So you couldn't post everything. Now it's believed that all 7 board members are in this. We know 6 for sure, but we believe 7 have their private Facebook group, and on their website they say we're talking about what's happening behind closed doors of the school board in this Facebook group. So some of you who understand open meetings laws in Wisconsin understand the gravity of that. That's been going on since months before our elections. And of course, we have all been pretty quiet about it, and we're just waiting. So our Wrightstown Community School District covers parts of Brown County, Allegheny County, and Winnebago County. It's pretty big. It's a small school, but geographically, it's a pretty big area.
When you say you're waiting for it, at this point, what are you waiting for when you said you're waiting?
So there's a criminal investigation going on right now, and we don't know what's going to happen. So they looked into a bunch of different things. We'll see. So the first thing they looked at is the destruction of the previous school superintendent's documents. She was a superintendent for over 20 years. Her Google account was erased. Apparently all of her files were deleted that were internal as well. That's a nice one. So that was one of the first issues. Now I've been talking about this and other things internally. We got a new law firm in to take a look at some of the things that were going on, and they had recommended that we turn this over to the state, have them take a look at it, and then it ended up into the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. They've been doing an investigation since, I believe, April. So, yeah. So it can get pretty sticky, right? So you have to go in there and you have to understand you need to be patient. If you're one of 7 people, one of 5 people, or one of 9 people, depending upon the board you're on, it takes the majority to actually put things on an agenda sometimes. Even though I believe state law says you can put things on an agenda, then you have a mechanism to do it. But you need to be patient, and you need to be able to get along with people, right? You're not going to persuade anybody by being a jerk to them, right? So we all need to be civil, and we need to take the high road. And I believe, you know, there's a purpose behind all of this, and I think that our kids are worth it. So just make sure you're being called to it. Make sure that you have the ability to stick it out, and you have your family support 100%. So that's my story. So do you want to talk about hot button issues now, or we go past our time?
I think what we'll do is proceed here with some of the specific questions we've got here. We sort of discussed in your case there, Jeff, your school board, as far as your run and what you run into there. One of the parts of that question number 2 was, what did you learn about running for school board? And I think patience certainly came out, along with respect for others, probably are 2 key things, because it's so easy to let the emotions take that away from one, But by the way, both of you jump in here if you want, as I try to orchestrate this a little bit. I think I'm going to say we'll move on with question 3, if that's all right. Is that all right? What were some of the hot button issues or biggest concerns you heard while door knocking? Let's start with Drew here.
I guess I'd like to just go back real quick. I agree with everything you said about, the reasons to run, how to run, and so on. But bringing other people along with you, I think you could have emphasized that a little bit more, just because it gets very lonely when you're constantly reading stuff on Facebook, when you hear things, people are calling you, having that network. You mentioned family, absolutely, but kind of like in this question number 3, and why I wanted to backtrack just a second there, when you're doing the door knocking, and I know there's a question in there about raising money and how money can help, donations, all that stuff, and that's great. But I've argued this point for as long as I've been part of any board, really. Money only goes so far. If you're not bringing people with you, the money isn't going to do it. So getting the money, yeah, it does make the world go around, but if you get a group of people like what we have in here, and you can make that happen, the money you'll figure out the money.
The money will follow, won't it?
It definitely seems to follow. If you have the money and you have nobody supporting it, well, then you just have a bunch of money and it's going nowhere. So that was one of the things that I learned from the door knocking, is I didn't spend a lot of money campaigning. I know other people would, and that's fine if you want to do that. For me, I would much rather just meet people like yourselves, knock on doors, go to meetings, whatever, and volunteer my time, shake somebody's hand and say, this is what I'm standing for. You don't have to agree with it, but I'm probably not gonna back down when I feel passionately about it. If you have good reasons why I should change my mind, we can have that conversation too. And just being real. And that was the thing with the door knocking, the transparency and the financial responsibility seem to come up time and time again. And they're like, everybody always says, yeah, we're gonna be transparent. Or, you know what, we're gonna fix the finances. And my response was always the same. Have I ever told you that? Well, no. I said, then I don't think that's fair to accuse me of being a liar right out of the gate. At least give me a chance to prove that, right? And they would smile. I'm like, obviously, I'm not gonna prove that. I'm gonna do everything I can to do the other way around, to be transparent, to be, fiscally responsible and so on. And it's taken me over 4 years of just going to board meetings, even before I was on the board, sticking it out, asking those tough questions, being told, just sit down and shut up. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, maybe I don't. Then explain it to me, because the answers you're giving don't explain anything. That's why I'm asking them. So once I got to the part of knocking on doors, and I did, like I said, a lot more meetings, meet and greet type things. It always got back to, if you're going to do something, or you say you're going to do something, make sure you do it, and make sure people know that you did that and followed through. You know, some of the things that I promised or said I wanted to do, once I got on the board, there were reasons we couldn't go down that path. And that's okay too. I mean, you know, to your point earlier, it's not just me. I have a whole board. So if we decide as a board we have to go a different direction, the only thing I can guarantee is that I brought it up, brought my facts, had the conversations, and unfortunately it didn't go that way. That doesn't mean I gave up. It doesn't mean I lied about it, but then just own that. And hey, you know what? Maybe that's a building block for something else, because maybe that won't even work. Even though the 6 other people on the board swore this was the best idea ever, they can be wrong too. And that's okay. You still have to go down that path and try and help turn it back around. So
Let's get
you know,
Jeff over there to get us the 10 center here.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, knocking on doors, when I knocked on doors, I'd have people tell me point blank, this is the first time anyone's knocked on our door for politics in years. We had our state senator knocking on doors for us this last campaign. So that was pretty impressive. But we hit a bunch of doors. And we did the small groups. We tried to get them to come to do a debate, right? In the meantime, they were giving donuts to teachers in the lounge and posted on Facebook. It was pretty good. Anyways, the topics, right? So what are the hot button issues? Title IX is a big issue, even though it went away because Trump took the rules out. So Title IX was created in 1972, and it was to give equal access to sports, essentially, for females, an even playing field and across education for the most part, equal scholarships to men and women, and Biden administration went back to what Obama tried to do, which is it's your choice, your gender is your choice, and that's your sex. So essentially they're saying that you could say you're a female and have a doctor's note and 2 years of psychological history of this, and all of a sudden you could be a biological male and you could get the scholarship, right? So in our case, it was in the bathrooms or in the locker rooms. UW-Madison didn't pass it. A lot of superintendents demanded that their boards pass that policy. Did they pass that in yours, Drew? The new Title IX last year?
yeah, it was very controversial and still tearing our board apart.
Yeah, we didn't pass it. So our board, we had the conservatives on the board, and we didn't pass it. We don't have to worry about it because it's, you know, so when Trump came in and threw it out, our school district is safe. But some school districts still have those policies in place, which is what the left was hoping to do. They were hoping that a lot of these school boards and the community members would be asleep at the wheel. And so now you have, I don't know, maybe 65% of the school districts in the state of Wisconsin that say that's their policy, that it's gender identity defines your sex when it comes to using the bathroom and when it comes to locker rooms. So it's a shame. So that's still a big issue today. Just like Drew said, it's still a big issue in his district. The other one is state report cards. So our school district gets really high grades, exceeds expectations. Take a look at the academic side of it. Only 20% of our grade is academics. It's falling off the roof. I mean, when I sat through a DPI meeting last January, and where they explained what the new criteria was. Oh, by the way, they're changing it again next year. So every year it's changed. I think it's changed 4 times in the last 5 years. They keep changing it because they keep bringing the bar down lower, because the education gap, the learning gap during COVID was very severe. And there's no better way to change what people are looking at than just changing the bar. But our community school district, I believe, across the board, out of 20 tests, 10 English, ELA, English Language Arts, and 10 math scores, we didn't get to 3 out of 5. So we didn't even hit the state average. But yet we're exceeds expectations. So if you sit down with your children and you give them a book and you have them read and you realize this is something that, you know, my grandparents would have read, in the 4th or 5th grade, and they're in the 5th and 6th grade, and they're having a hard time staying focused, there's a problem. And a lot of it has to do with what's going on in the home. People giving PDAs, phones to their children. So there's lots of parental issues. But when it comes down to the schools still need to be overcoming that. And we have great teachers in Wrightstown, great teachers. And they try as hard as they can. And I thought as a board member, we should be bringing the families into the schools to help educate them and tell them what they should be doing for these kids in their formative years. So that's another issue. There's a bunch of issues. Funding, I'd say the last one I'll leave is it's an epidemic across the state. It's debt defeasance. So you're going to go into a referendum. They'll say, hey, we need this, this, and this, and it's $50 million. And you go to the hearings, and they'll bring in the bond counsel and the bond people, and they'll say, hey, it's 20-year bond payment. Some districts do this, right, like ours did, and that's what the community expects. You make a promise to them. You tell them that. You advertise it. You market it, right? Once you lose your integrity, do you think you're going to get the next referendum? Because when you have principal and interest due of, let's say, 2.5 million, and then you tax 4 million, it's not good. And what they do is they try to pay it off in half. They double the tax to the community. They cut the loan payments or years in half. And then they go to the district, to the community, and then they'll say, hey, we need this now and this, and here's a $25 million referendum, and you'll only pay, your mill rate will only go up 32 cents per 1,000, right? Because they're basing it off of the old taxes. And because they base it off the old taxes, it's pretty easy to convince a lot of people, hey, wow, I can get a new elementary school for only 32 cents per $1,000 that's been levied. It's dishonest. It's not being forthright. And so
what is the actual, let's take the case you just cited, 32 cents on 1,000. What would you say the actual is in comparison?
So it depends upon the community. So I'll just give you an example. When we had a $28.7 million referendum, we were told by our superintendent that the community demanded a flat mill rate, 8.85, right? Well, there's 3 things that go into this. Equalized assessed values. Every single year, a school district property values are going to go up, right? They don't go down. They always go up. Inflation it's just inflation. For example, property values go up. So if you keep a steady mill rate at 8.85 per 1,000 levied, your taxes are going up every single year. So first of all, most people don't know what a mill rate is, right?
Right.
So when we reduced ours, we stopped defeasing debt this last year. Again, conservative majority stopped this. We brought I believe our mill rate went down to 5.91, somewhere around that neighborhood. Don't quote me on that, but it was under 6. So, yeah, it went way down, way down. So we have people in our neighborhood that bought their houses right after the referendum, and their property taxes were, $5,500 to $7,500, and they're paying, we would go, I have a guy in my neighborhood who's paying $13,000 one year, and the next year was $21,000. Right? So imagine paying that. It's not. The question becomes: are you actually paying taxes, or are you paying rent? Right? I mean, that's ridiculous. And we've had many people leave. It was my neighborhood in particular. Many people left because of taxes. So that's a big issue. And if you watch a referendum, if you're having a referendum, make sure you go to those hearings and you ask. You get it on the record. You say, is this a 20-year bond repayment? And then you ask the question, are you planning to defease debt? And if they say, yes, we're planning to defease debt, they're going to take millions of dollars out of your community, right? How far would, in our case, it was a little over $5.8 million that they defeased. So the residents of Outagamie, Brown, in Winnebago County, $5.8 million, right? That's a lot of money. Look at the opportunity cost. Parents could have taken that money and put it into 527 and paid for their kids' college education. They could have paid off their credit cards, right? What are they losing by paying thousands of dollars in extra taxes? So school districts, there's a lot of responsibility that goes into being a school board member, and understanding your job and educating yourself as a school board member is really important. So I would say those are probably my top 3 issues.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna watch the time a little bit here. We want to get through these next questions and open it up to the floor here. I'd say somewhere around 20 to 8, we'll try to open it up to the floor and see. But let's, if I can, we'll try to move a little more quickly if I can with you. Once on the school board, what was the biggest surprise? Do you want to have at it first?
Sure. Easily said, time. How much time it took for me to prepare for a meeting, to talk to people, to answer emails, just everything that and maybe, I went above and beyond compared to some others, but sitting in that seat, I took it very seriously. So I responded to people, I did the research, I came with the questions. If somebody told me this is what I should think or this is how I should vote, okay. I would go home and I'd research and look into everything I could, because I've learned that if somebody's trying to convince you, it's probably not in my best interest that they're doing that. So just questioning, whether it be the legal team or the superintendent or people in the community, and not that all people are bad, but questioning and just that amount of time. Then the other part of the time equation is how long the meetings took, how long it took to even start moving forward. Some of the best ideas, it was like, this is great, let's do this. Well, hold on. Now we need to have a committee meeting, or now we need to gather this, or, it was just all the time that it took to do, any of those things. And with that, I guess I had a sense of responsibility to put that time in. So I'm not really complaining about it, but I definitely didn't know the commitment that I would put forth to being on there and just how much time it would take.
Okay, let's catch Jeff here for a minute.
That's the right answer. It's time. You prepare, and you will hear this phrase, you need to trust your administrators. You need to trust the superintendent. Well, I'm sorry, I verify. I trust, but I verify, right? It sounds like Drew does the same thing. So there's just a whole bunch of time that goes into preparing. And so it took a lot longer than I thought it would. Definitely a lot longer. So, but if you have a good superintendent, if you have someone that plays by the rules, it gets easier. And I know several board members across the state that have really outstanding superintendents that lay everything out. And then the last thing that you touched on is how long does it take something to get done? It's not business, right? Where I can make a decision with my board and we can move on from project A to project B and set a timeline and get it done. It's like an act of Congress to get something done in a school district sometimes. And the delays are deliberate in a lot of cases. So it's frustrating, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Once on that school board, what was the biggest challenge that you had to deal with?
It's kind of a revolving door. Having constructive, productive meetings, conversations, etc. I've been accused of being very harsh, very straight to the point, and so people are like, well, you don't even want to work with anybody. No, I just have my opinions and they differ from yours. That should be okay. Tell me your opinion and maybe we can come to some common ground. Actually, I was on the board before this 3-year term, and one of the guys that had to resign for being on the board, health issues and so on, I swore him and I were about as opposite as they come. And he said, would you like to meet for coffee someday? Sure. So I'll speed the story up. We went for coffee. 3 hours later, I'm like, I'm going to be late for work. I got to go. He's like, hey, this was great. We should do this again. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Call me. And on my drive to work, I'm thinking, we disagreed on everything. Why would he want to meet with me again? But I had a good time. I like talking to people that I don't know and disagree with and so on. So we did this 2-3 times, and finally I'm like, before we go and try and solve the world's problems and disagree on everything, I just got to ask you, why would you want to meet with me? Like, in today's age, if you disagree with somebody, that means you have to be an enemy, and that's it, no more. And he's like, what do you mean we disagree? We have conversations, but we agree on pretty much everything. Well, right there, I disagree with you. And he's like, well, give me an example. I'm like, I just did. I said we disagree, you said we agree. And he said something, and I've used this, and while I'm taking time right now, I think if people, like everybody can get this concept, the world would be way better. He's like, we disagree on how to get somewhere, but we agree that, maybe we're trying to get to this water bottle. I'm saying we go right there. If I asked you, you'd probably say, well, yeah, maybe for you, but that's not the way I want to get there. I want to go around the table because it's closer to that side. Now I'm saying, no, you're wrong. We're not really disagreeing. We're trying to get to the bottle. And so, especially now as president, I've used that analogy many, many times for the board, for the community. Hey, I understand your opinions. Let's focus on the bottle and not the path. And that's been the biggest challenge, is trying to get people to understand that concept. And it's okay to work together. And maybe it's not going to be your way this time, but maybe the next 3 times will be. I don't know. Maybe not. It doesn't really matter how you get there, as long as we get to where we're trying to go.
Sounds good, Jeff.
That was a great example. For me, it was governance, board governance. It's just how people felt, how they followed the Robert's Rules of Order and the roles of the clerk, the president. That was an issue. So if you do run, just go to a few meetings. Go to, not even school board meetings, go to the municipal buildings, or go to the municipal meetings. Watch how they run their meetings. I've sat in hundreds and hundreds of meetings prior to being on the school board, and I just thought it was really weird how we ran ours, and school board members got ignored for the most part. It wasn't a school board driven agenda, and that was probably one of the biggest eye-openers, biggest obstacles.
Okay, let's move on to point 6 we got. Once on the school board, do you feel you were having or have had an impact? What has to change to have a bigger impact?
Yeah, I've definitely made an impact. I continue to make the newspaper pretty much every week. Not always in a favorable light, but again, I feel like I'm doing things for the right reason, logic, accountability, those kind of things. So when I see those things, okay, I agree. That's what I said, because I feel it's the right thing. The biggest thing, especially now that I've been the president this year, we flipped the board. I helped somebody else run their campaign. He got on, and so it's still a 4-3 vote, but it's more in favor of what I think is okay. And so I have people in the community and even board members. Now that we have power, we should just go ahead and do this. And why are you playing nice with everybody? And why is this taking so long? Because I want this to be a lasting thing. I may not be president ever again after this year, but I can build some things, and I can hopefully steer the ship in the right direction and show people there is a right way to do things. And it's not my way, it's not your way, it's what we all work together to do. So if I go in there and say, well, now that we have 4-3 vote, this is the way it is, when I'm not there, it could easily go to the next person and they could do that. And what are we building? And what am I showing? I have 2 daughters, 2 teenage daughters. And so I always think, if they're watching these videos, am I gonna be okay with them watching that and how I'm acting? Or am I gonna have to try and justify it at home? Like, why did I act like a toddler in front of everybody? Or why did I not listen to all the board members? Why didn't I do these things? Or now I can say, you know what, I try to include everybody.
That's good. good governance right there. Okay, so I felt I did have an impact, but it wasn't me, it was the community asking for the changes. So we ended debt defeasance, so we ended the double tax. And then we had the ad hoc committee, and a lot of the committee was set up and the board approved a much more, local-based sex ed education. So those are two good changes. Right now, I'm a board member for Wisconsin. It's a statewide board, and we're trying to recruit conservative school board members. It's WSEL.
What's that stand for?
So it is. Let me show you. Let's put this back here. We've changed the acronym like 5 times trying to come up with this. Chris Martinson set this up. So many of you know Chris. He was the one that talked us into speaking up here today. So Chris and I pioneered this with a group of other board members across the state. It's WSLE, Wisconsin School Leaders for Excellence. It's an alternative to WASB, which is the Wisconsin Association of School Board Members. And what you find when you go to WASB, it's a great tool to learn. You can network with people. However, they take more of a administrators organization, in my opinion. Everything goes back to the administrators. It represents more of the bureaucracy than it does the individual board members. So we've created an alternative. I think we're well over 100 members at this point, probably close to 200 members. That's what I've been working on recently. So there's more to go. Will I run in Wrightstown again? I don't know. If my wife lets me, probably. So it took a lot of time. And I've got 3 young kids. And I don't regret it. And I'll probably do it at some point. I don't know if it'll be right away. We'll see.
So what I've got is 2 questions that I thought I would add to the list that you haven't seen. First one, in your opinions, why do so many conservative school board candidates fail to get elected? Want to start?
It's tough. It's tough to play the game, play the politics, play I got to put other people down to make me look good. If you don't do that, people aren't going to be talking about you on Facebook, and you're not going to get your name out there. And, he's talking about litigation. I actually have a complaint against me right now because I'm not fit to be a school board member, president. I don't even know. They haven't really told me. And so I could be out there bad-mouthing people and so on, but I'm not going to do that. But that takes a lot of time and effort to stay that high road. But again, like I said before, I'm okay with that because I got to be a good dad and a good family guy that I don't want to have to answer those questions. So for me, it's well worth it. But I think to answer your question, it's a tough road, and you really have to follow your faith and follow your core values, or it can be really slippery.
So you use the word, before he passes that on, you used the word a second ago, they. They brought a lawsuit, whoever, and you're not sure who they is, if I just interpreted correctly. So,
Correct.
So explain why you don't know what's going on, that the they is invisible.
I actually met with I call him an interrogator. I don't know, some type of an attorney that was appointed or recommended by our school attorney to look into this. This has never been at a board meeting where it was discussed. It just is happening. I've seen the bills, and it's over 10 grand now
What bills?
for all this interrogation and looking into whatever.
That these people are
That
responsible for paying.
From what I can gather, it's somebody from the community wrote a formal complaint, sent it to our vice president. She took it upon herself to contact the lawyer, and this was the path that they went down. I have yet to see anything in writing, but I spent 2.5 hours with the lawyer, and I had to remind him that I sell insurance for a living, so you're not gonna hurt my feelings. And that's when he brought up, well, you know, you're being accused of being very harsh. Well, that's the first thing I've actually heard that I was accused of. And he's like, what do you have to say about that? Well, I didn't know there was a question there. So we went round and round, and I'm like, you know, as a president of the school board, wouldn't you want somebody that kind of has a spine? And,
Yep.
you know, I said, if you watch, and one of the other things I've done is we record all of our meetings. And so I'm like, you are welcome to go on YouTube and see just how harsh I am and the words I use and everybody else. I said, and if I'm doing something wrong, point it out. I said, you're not even telling me what I'm even doing wrong. So this is just, you know, and again, to your question, these are some of the things why other people, I've had many people contact me. They're like, I don't know how you keep showing up to these meetings. I guess I'm not smart enough. I don't know.
See what Jeff says to that.
I had the same question asked to me hundreds and hundreds of times because I have a feeling we're the same way in a boardroom.
Yeah.
But this isn't, you know, administrators will run past a bunch of really good things. They'll do a section where they bring, you know, student achievement out and we'll honor some of the kids, but sometimes it becomes a show and there's no focus on academic excellence. So what I would say, why do people get discouraged? Why do they run on the board and they run for the board and they quit, or they lose their desire and they're out? And I'm going to go back to the word they. I'd say the establishment pretty much doesn't want to be told what to do. I'm just going to lay it out there like that. You have professional educators, and then you have a board, in my case, of 7 people who from all different walks of life, and they do what they want to do, and they don't want oversight. And as soon as you start asking questions, as soon as you start asking the wrong questions, well, then all of a sudden you're the odd man out. You can't go into the school with people looking in your eye. They look away. They're like, well, I'm like, what did I do? Right? I'm sure you're used to that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So investigating people, doing all this crazy stuff, we have to take education back, and you need to have a spine to do it, and you need to be strong, and you need to stick with it, and you need to arm yourself with the statutes, and you need to arm yourself with an alliance, like Drew was saying before. So one of the things that I found to be very helpful, and this is a side note here, my brother runs one of the largest PACs in Kentucky. He's also, of course, here from Wisconsin. It's called the Kentucky Commonwealth Policy Center, and they flipped the state from blue to red over his tenure. It's a blue state. He gave me some advice. He said, before you announce you're going to run, you go to every person of influence, every one of your friends, and you knock on their door, or you get in a meeting with them, or you have coffee with them, you tell them, hey, I'm thinking about running for school board, but I want your counsel. You're somebody that I respect. What advice do you have to give me? Do you think it's worth it? And I did that. I met with about 30 people, and I had them behind me before I ran, right? And they still stood by me, every single one of them in my last election. It's a big deal. Once you start shaking hands and you meet with people and you tell them how important they are to you, because they were. These were people that I look up to and that I trust, and they're pillars in our community. So you do that, and then you run in it with a team, right? If there's 3 open seats, you make sure you have 3 conservatives running. It's very difficult. You need to do grassroots stuff. You need to knock on more doors than you ever thought was possible, and you need friends to do it too. So when it came to campaigning for us, we could do co-branded signs. That helps. But you have to have your heart in it, and you need to have a spine, and you need to get in for the long haul. That's the point.
Keep the mic there, and we'll come back with the last question. What, if anything, do you believe you did differently in your campaigns that helped you to be elected?
I knocked on doors nobody else had before. I knocked on a lot of doors, and I talked to people, and I listened to them, and I told them what I thought, and exactly like Drew said, you can't make promises, but you can get to the bottom of it, and you can figure it out. And that's what we did, especially with the taxes and the human growth and development that was being being taught. So between those two issues, that was the big difference maker, is talking to people face to face and listening. That was it.
I would say probably the exact same thing with a little different twist on it. It's getting out there and meeting the people for sure, listening to what they have to say, but then it's what you do after. The follow-up, I think, is what has set me way apart from a lot of people. And I've heard this time and time again. I can't believe you're calling me back. We talked 2 days ago or 2 weeks ago or whatever. And if it's a bigger subject, I'll tell them, I don't know how long this is going to take, but I will call you back. So don't be sitting by your phone and just waiting, because it might be a few weeks. You know, I got other things going on. But I make sure I call them back. And I've had to apologize. Hey, you know, when we talked, I was thinking it was kind of this way, and I know we talked about that, but here's what I actually found. And people are like, and that's it? You're not gonna send me some line or whatever? Why would I do that? That's not me. I'm telling you, I made a mistake. And just own that. Or, hey, you know what? I did find some of this stuff. I didn't know how deep in the weeds you wanted to get, so I wanted to check in with you. Do you want to keep going down this path? No, that's okay. Or, hey, you know, I got this opportunity now. Do you want to get involved? You know, there's so many ways that follow-up can just keep growing. And like I said before, if you're trying to build something, you got to bring people with you. And so everything you said, absolutely. But I think that next step, and I'm sure you do this, that follow-up and bringing the people with you is what really makes or breaks anybody.
Okay, we're through the questions. We're going to pass the buckets, as our great tradition is here. And just give me a heads up there. So at this time, let's take some questions from the audience. Eric?
Yeah, what have you seen in terms of outside money coming in to influence the local school boards, and where is the money coming from?
Everybody hear that question back there?
Where is money coming from to influence the local school boards?
Yeah.
I haven't been part of the school board campaigning for more than the last few years. I think there is more and more of a push from different organizations, but I haven't seen a lot yet, and I'm okay with that. Most of the people that I know that are running, it's local support in forms of, hey, come to my business, we'll do a meet and greet, maybe not monetary, but those connections.
So I think it's local. I think what you're going to find is endorsements coming from outside of the area, right? So our the people that we ran against were endorsed by the teachers union, right? So we get endorsed by the NEW Patriots, and then all of a sudden we're evil because we're evil according to them, right? So when it comes to money, you know, people they can do in-kind stuff, and 9 times out of 10 you're unaware of it. Like, we found out someone did Facebook posts for us, and that was like, we just didn't even know until after the election. But it's mostly self-funded. In Wisconsin laws, if you have $2,500 in activity, you have to claim non-exempt status. If you spend underneath 25, it's not spending, it's actually how much money you raise. That includes your own contributions to your own campaign. Essentially, if you spend $1,250, you have to account for every nickel and dime, right? So I did coffee shops, pass the hats, as long as the donation is under $10. You know, that you don't have to get the name of the person and then their occupation. We had a couple donors, but I didn't really go out and ask for money. I just self-fit in. I think that's what most people in our district do. But bigger districts, of course, I'm sure there are campaign donations flying back and forth, but in smaller Wisconsin rural areas, I haven't seen any of it. So,
one of the things I'll comment real quick that Chris Martin said to me, when we look at a smaller district, compared to, for instance, the Appleton Area School District. I think it was the 7th largest, I believe, that's what he said. The campaign is going to have to be quite different. And my guess would be on the money side, when I've seen here, I think in the money side that I'll bet is a change factor.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions, Mike?
Yeah, quick question. I'm glad you talked a little bit about, I was wondering if you could get to the strategy of how to get elected versus what you did when on the board. And a couple of things about Appleton, because I've been involved. Mike Thomas used to be in the county board for 26 years, so I'm very familiar with what's going on. It basically had 3 or 4 or 5 candidates run for school board. A couple of things in Appleton people need to realize. The teachers union is very powerful, and they run the candidates as a ticket. When you look at the signs, they're all in the same yard. Now, you recommended that the conservatives, I'm glad we have 3 people, I think, that are volunteering. That's unusual for conservatives to have 3 people wanting to run. Hopefully you do agree to run. But I think running as a ticket is a conservative ticket. And I think Appleton this year is up with 3 slots, I think.
Yes,
It's
this year.
3, 2, and 2 usually. There's 7. But it's awfully powerful, especially if they force you into a primary type of situation in February when you have the teachers union and the teachers come out in April. Now, this may be different in this April because we have a Supreme Court race, so that may bring out more voters. But I think you would agree running as a ticket is probably a good strategy.
It's an excellent strategy, but how you do it is very important. We can take it offline and talk.
Well, I
about it
actually
later.
try to some of the candidates, but you know, it's
There's a strategy behind it, and running 3. Now, I've helped in a campaign in a different county where they had 4 seats open, and the opposition ran 6 candidates, and they did it, and it worked for them. So there's lots of different strategies, but for the most part, you want to go straight in with 3 candidates. So if there's 3 open spots, you do it, and the way you message it is how you message it is very important. So that's the key. And I'm aware of the way WEAC, local WEAC unions run their election. It's grassroots. It is social media driven. It is co-branded from the very beginning, so people know exactly who supports the teachers. We're here to support the kids and the teachers, right? But our focus is on the kids. So
I think one thing that would do having 3, because usually if there's only 1 candidate, a lot of voters say, well, you have a choice of 3, and they say, well, I'll vote for you and the other 2. No, you don't vote. You don't vote 2 other people, but if you vote for 3 and you tell them this is the 3 you vote for, it takes that off the table.
correct.
Because a lot of people don't know that, and they wind up giving what I call a half vote to the opposition.
But it has to do, timing is of the essence, and we'll talk about it after, because if WEAC has they don't have an infinite amount of money, right?
Right.
Each school district has a limited amount of money. So there's a way to get strategic with it. So running 3 board members is correct, but you need to be strategic in how you do it.
But you may be able to help the 3 that wind up doing it. So.
I just wanted to add, safety in numbers. So to your point about having 3, especially if you have a diverse group of 3 that realize you have to meet the voters where they're at. You can't just put signs in yard. You can't just do the door knocking. You can't just do Facebook. You have to do it all. And if they're gonna run as 3, you have to be a solid front where all 3 of you are on the same page. And if you get a diverse group of 3, then my group might intercept with your group a little bit, but then you're gonna have your group and then his group. Between the 3 of us, we'll get most of the community, at least some way, shape, or form. So that's really the advantage.
If I could follow that for a second, if I might. Are we talking a unity campaign amongst the 3 candidates, meaning maybe 3 issues that we're agreeing on as a group of candidates? Is that part of it?
I guess I would argue every campaign, every election has its own key to the castle. So that's a brainstorming thing that you need to decide. Is it better to have just 1 or 2 key subjects and really push those issues? Is it better to just have that, hey, we're out in the community, bring our questions or bring your questions to us? don't know if you have an opinion on that. I think that's very complicated.
So you always want to run with somebody that has, they have to have the same values you do, right? So if you have 3 conservatives, you're probably going to agree, 7 out of 8 things probably, right? So you get some libertarian conservatives, you have some, mega conservatives, but when it comes to school boards, just this side, we're all gonna line up in the same camp, but it goes to the direct to the bottom, like what you're saying before is you're not always gonna agree on how to get to point A, but you can figure out a way if you can work together. It is imperative that you do run in a team. How you do it is also very important.
Yes.
I think it was last year, maybe you'd remember, there was a school board member, a woman from De Pere, I think it was. And
It was the young woman you're talking about?
Yeah.
Niffenegger, isn't it? Niffenegger?
Melissa Neffenhager.
yeah, and the point there is, and what you're saying about if there are 3 spots, to make sure that there are 3 conservatives that are running. What she talked about is because they had either 2 or 3 conservatives, I think all Christian people, and the rest of the school board was really degrading and mean to them, and would say, you take your Christian values out of this is not what this is about, where this is a school board, a public school board. And she said that either 1 or 2 of the other conservatives left because of how they were treated. And the more that, if there are 3 openings and you have 3 conservatives, if they happen to get in, they've got to work together so that they're not feeling all alone.
They were working together. They were bullied. They were taking
Yeah.
shots at her business.
Yeah.
And you need to be careful. I mean, they will
try
take
to
shots at
they
you.
basically are trying to ruin them.
Yeah, our board president, she's an instructor at NWTC. They ran her name through the mud. They went to the press. They said things that I believe were false. Their allegations weren't true. She tried to bring the board together. She tried to give everybody an opportunity to put something on the agenda. She wanted to have a big difference. She wanted to do all these things. But in our situation, again, you're fighting. I don't want to say the bureaucracy. It's almost like a machine. It's a
Well, the
machine.
ends justify the means.
Absolutely, and that's how they can reason it out.
Yeah.
But it comes to a point where, like what I was said about debt defeasance, right? It's not illegal to debt defease. You can defease debt, but you need to declare it to the public, and you can't be. You have to be transparent, right? You have to maintain your integrity, and I'm not going to run a campaign where I'm out there on Facebook saying somebody is stupid or dumb or they don't know this or they don't know. It's just not a way to win.
But there's ways to state the truth.
You state the truth, right? And yeah, I mean, I stayed off of Facebook, right? Maybe that was a mistake, but I was afraid that I was going to say too much. I mean, I would have, but the whole point of it is if people think you're a bully, they're never going to vote for you, right? And just let them be the bullies. It'll come around. What comes around goes around. So in their situation, they ended up passing a massive, huge brand new school and a whole bunch of other stuff, and they're defeasing debt. Just
Yeah,
wait,
it's
see what
just
happens.
sometimes bullies can get their point across enough that they are believed.
Absolutely, I've seen it happen. It happened in our district, right? But hopefully it'll all come out.
Yeah.
I'm crossing my fingers.
If I could, in this question, I want to ask, when we have a situation that's being described here, and you talked about the bullies, we talked about the silent element in the lawsuit, would it not be important in these situations to have a very solid group of strong supporters that come forth in a unified way, focused on those attacks and those messages?
Absolutely.
And have you experienced that, either one of you?
Yeah, and so we, in our group, we faced a massive group of trolls and who have nothing better to do than sit online, and included, people who shouldn't have been online during working hours, but attacking nonstop. They would post questions like, what do you think about what so-and-so did at the meeting yesterday? And then somebody would say, oh, that's a great question, Amy. I think that it was this and this and this. And then the next person would say, it was all staged, right? These are professional trolls. I mean, they're not getting paid.
No, you use the word professional. I want you to expand on that.
So somehow these people are being coached, okay? They're trolls. And I don't know about you, but I think most conservatives, we work, we have families, we have better things to do than sit on Facebook all day and rip on people and tear everybody else down, right? And that's what happens. And you divide a community. Our community is so divided right now, right? I got people that I go into their local grocery store, people want to high five me, and some people like turn around and walk away. There's that guy that made them have that committee so they wouldn't teach the woke stuff, right? I mean, you definitely, you have these professionals on there. It's what they do. They are ingrained, they do it, and it's always the same 15 to 20 people. Now, we need to do the same thing. And I don't think conservatives are there yet. I think organizations like this could help with that, right?
And also, what about if you went on organizations like this, Moms for Liberty? Would either one of you comment on that organization? Because they're obviously getting more and more involved in these elections.
Moms for Liberty was the group that bailed us out of having to do Title IX, because people in our community joined Moms for Liberty. And as soon as you had a member of Moms for Liberty, you did not have to pass that policy, the Title IX policy. So Moms for Liberty is there. We do not have a Wrightstown group yet. I believe there's an Outagamie County group though. So they would be very helpful.
Other questions? I've spoken up a few times.
I'd like to just make
I'm sorry.
one real quick comment on that. As far as like what you're saying with direct bullying and so on, I've gone through it all in the last 3-4 years. And it's just this last year where these other people, I don't even know exactly who all they are, but like he's saying, it's never ending Facebook comments and, show up to the meeting using the public comment section. If you react, it's no different than having a bully on the playground. I'm not going to come out winning because I try to defend myself. So I've taken the totally opposite stance and just keep doing what's right. And now it's to the point where I know some of these people. I've been friends with them for years. I don't know where they're coming from anymore, but they tell other people that I know. And he doesn't even react to anything I say. To me, that's the best compliment ever. You're right. I'm not going to stoop to that level because there's no point. Nobody's going to win that. But to your point, having groups like the Moms for Liberty, the different law firms that say, hey, as a school board member, if you have questions, just call us. Having those higher, bigger, broader groups of people that aren't going to fight my fight, but generally stick up for people, I think that's where we have to focus.
Have you utilized the Will Law Firm at all?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I know we're just about finished. I see about 1 minute maybe left. Any other questions? I'd like to call Dave.
Just piggybacking what you just said, I'm assuming that those 20 busybodies that are professional agitators, they know that there's lurkers out there, people who don't really know what's all going on, and so because an election's coming or whatever, they're going to go read these comments. Therefore, we do need people, I'm assuming you agree with this, who just simply would invest a little bit of effort knowledgeably and without getting down into the pigs level, rebut some of this stuff just for the lurkers who don't know what else to think. That's the disadvantage to your approach, Drew, that was your name?
Yes.
Where you're not getting involved, but yet you know the details. So I don't know how that's best managed. Maybe you react to that.
When I say I don't get involved, I have people that do get involved. Asking questions, putting it on agendas, because now I can have that conversation in a meeting that is recorded. So when people say I said or did something, yeah, watch the video. I'm okay with that. I kind of alluded to it before too, but the handshake and the follow-up. So I do go on Facebook. I don't comment much, but if I see the same couple people commenting on things, I might just message them directly. Hey, would you want to meet for coffee? Just, you seem like you have some concerns, or just open that up. And half the time, I never get a response. But then sometimes I do, and all of a sudden, I'm not the bad guy. I've met with them, and you and I might disagree at first, but I think we can come to some common grounds and just being honest and not trying to take off the whole situation, just one at a time. And it's a lot of effort and it's a lot of time.
So has the 20 agitators become 10 as a result of your face-to-face efforts?
You're never going to fix everybody. And I got to remind myself it's not my fault other people are making bad choices. So keeping that in mind, you know what, I have probably 6 to 8 people guaranteed. One of our teachers has a spouse, cancer, she can't come to work. He came to the board meeting and gave just kind of update and said, hey, thank you for supporting her, on and on and on. As president, anybody that gives a public comment like that, I always just say thank you. I don't want to be like, oh, well, I did this for this one and not for that one. These 6, 8 people got on Facebook the next day. Can you imagine that guy? All he said was thank you. After that whole thing, I mean, she has cancer. You're mad that I said thank you. That's really the level you're at. So, you got to sometimes just realize who's doing it, and it's not your fault, that it really isn't your problem. Because if people want to listen to that, they're going to find a way to make that happen. You can only influence certain people, and that's where you got to put your effort.
You brought up Chris Martinson, both of you a little bit here tonight. Might be helpful for some of us to hear. Sounds like he's been helpful to you. Would you highly recommend him in terms of a support type of individual, and if you get into this?
Chris was my mentor. I mean, he took me under his wing whenever I had questions. He definitely pushed me in the right direction. He gave a little cheat sheet to me that I'm going to pass on tonight for any of you who are interested in running. So, yeah, I mean, Chris is great. It's the first person you want to call if you decide is Chris Martinson.
With that, I'm seeing a little after 8 now. So any last comments up there? Did you
Yeah, I want to comment on Chris, and I see your recording, so hopefully he'll get this message. I would contact Chris when you have a lot of time. Because he does like to talk, but it's because he has a lot to say. I sent him my answers today. I'm like, hey, can you just make sure I'm on the right page here? And he made some comments, and he's a great guy. But yeah, yep.
Okay. Well, do I have a question back there?
No, I have a question. I just have a comment. I would just say, for anyone considering running for school board, if you love kids and you love education, take the plunge. Don't, we've heard a lot of things about like, oh no, and you can kind of get like overwhelmed with the thought of doing it. But if your heart's into your kids or kids in general and education, do it. It just opens up so many things that you've never even thought about in the world of education and how school boards are run. So it's worth it.
I would reiterate that whole thing, and I actually circled something that I didn't find a time to put that in, but I literally, every agenda, I write this at the top of my agenda because, kind of like we talked about, there's so many distractions. People bring up things, and you never know why they're bringing them up or whatever, but you can get so far off track, and I literally write, how does this benefit students on the top of every agenda? So whenever we're talking about anything, if I look down, that's the first thing I read, And if you keep that focus, whatever, and maybe that's not what you write at the top of your agenda, but find that focus, the rest will figure it out.
Say a little prayer before we.
Yeah, and a little prayer, did I hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
That's what it's all about. It's about the kids, it's about the students. If your heart isn't there, then you don't belong in the school board. And exactly, I do the same thing. Is it about the kids? That's what I write on my agenda every single meeting. I look down, if we're straying, you know, I'll call the vote. I'll do whatever I can to shift it back into focusing on the kids. And that's what it's about.
With that, I think we're going to say meeting is adjourned. Stick around for a good conversation.